Hello! Hey,
Howdy, howdy.
everybody! Welcome to All Caps. I'm Isaac Anderson, author of Song of Bones and the Garden Maze. I'm joined here by my host, Tim McKay, author of The Fall of Selvandrea. And we're joined here by a very special guest, Devon Eriksen, author of Theft of Fire.
Devon, thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thank you for having me. I love having these little talks.
Great chance to talk all things books from someone who has had quite the journey getting Theft of Fire out, which I haven't finished yet. Isaac, you said you finished it, right? Or...
Yes.
Yeah.
I liked it very, very much.
It is a
ended
fun
in a
read
very,
so far.
very, very interesting place. I really want to see what happens next. It was the right amount of techno. It reminded me of a little bit of like Michael Crichton a little bit, where they have like science problems, unique, weird science problems. And it was cool.
Yeah,
It was really cool.
It sort of builds on that tradition of The Martian and Apollo 13 and solving problems in space.
Yeah.
Of course, there's a few other things going on, but the solving problems in space was fun to write.
Yes.
That's fun. With kind of, I mean, again, I'm still putting some damage into it, but it has that tone of adventure and optimism that you don't see as much, in a lot of sci-fi these days.
Yeah. Well, science fiction used to be about what we thought would happen when we developed more technology and went out and explored the universe.
Yeah.
And then something happened at the publishing houses, and suddenly we were reading a whole bunch of books about how we were going to be putting solar panels on the roof of our grass huts or fighting off the zombie mutant horde with sharpened pieces of rebar. And, in the science fiction world, books like that are fun as a seasoning, but they're not a food group.
Yeah.
You can't have an entire genre of A Canticle for Leibowitz.
Yeah.
Even though A Canticle for Leibowitz is a great book.
Yeah, whereas these days it's almost as if everything you see is dystopian, usually young adult and heavily focused on how humanity is terrible and how everything is headed to a dark place.
Yeah. It's a special genre I call scolding the reader. It's the scolding the reader genre. And maybe there are some people who like that, and they should probably engage in that in the privacy of their own bedrooms. But the rest of us kind of got sick of it. And that's why TradPub is kind of wandering around in a daze asking, why aren't men reading books anymore?
Yeah.
Well, you don't publish books, you publish lectures.
Right. Yeah. We don't want to read lectures. I'll watch one, but I don't want to read one.
Yeah.
Theft of Fire was really cool because I could totally see that future happening. It felt plausible.
Yeah, I tried to extrapolate from a lot of the likely trends. Of course, we're not going to find alien artifacts in the solar system. You have to have some fictional elements, but the rest of the technology is extrapolated from, okay, what if SpaceX really succeeds at what they're trying to do?
Yeah.
And howdy really quick to everyone showing up in the chat. Great to have you here. We're streaming live on X and on YouTube, and I believe on Rumble. Yeah,
Rumble should be working. I can check to see if it's actually working or not.
I think it's our first time attempting to do it on Rumble as well. So yeah, a little less experience on that front, but yeah. And look at this. Everyone's already coming in to say how fantastic Theft of Fire is. I believe. Yeah, Box of Trouble, the sequel. And I believe, did I see correctly? I think Theft of Fire is what 1,370, like 1,370 ratings on Amazon right now. On .com, I believe that's what I saw.
Something like that.
That's impressive. And it came out when? Not that long ago.
November 11th, 2023.
2023.
Oh,
okay.
Wow,
Yeah.
really?
So a year and a half-ish. Do I have that math
Yeah.
right? Yeah, I mean, that's impressive. That's very rapid lots of attention on what so far. Again, I can only judge on what I've read so far, but I was saying to you beforehand, it is hard to impress me with first person present tense. Just lately, it's been harder to find really good examples. Wow.
Yeah, it's a tool.
Yeah.
It's a tool in the author's toolbox, and there's a reason for using it.
Yeah.
Perspective and tense are not matters of taste.
Hmm.
You don't just paint with the brush you like the most. You paint with the brush that's appropriate to the kind of paint you're using and the kind of picture you're trying to draw.
Do you think?
So I think maybe a lot of people who are maybe slightly less experienced writers, and they do write in first person or present tense or both, sometimes maybe they don't quite understand what it's for.
Fair. Well, now I'm curious. What would you say in a nutshell if you could quickly
What are the
summarize
hard rules?
what is it for?
Well, it has to support the kind of story you're telling. And one of the sort of litmus tests I use when I'm talking to like editor or publisher types to see if they understand what tense and perspective are for is I ask them, why is Dune written in third person omniscient?
Mm.
And if they scratch their heads and say, I don't know, or he just liked it, then I don't really want to work with that person because there's going to be some friction.
Yeah.
My answer, and this is not the answer because I
Yeah.
can't read Frank Herbert's mind, but this is my answer. And this shows how I think about it, is Dune is a book about how politics and religion interact. And so you have this one situation that is being experienced differently by so many different people. And it's about politics, it's about faith, it's about belief, it's about the social aspects of large mobs.
Mm.
It's about church and state marching in the same direction. And so what Frank Herbert, I think, wanted to do was he wanted to show what was going on through the eyes of many, many different people.
Yeah.
So he has to head hop. And it is a testament to his skill that he pulls it off very well.
Hmm.
So why did I write Theft of Fire in first person present tense? Well, this book is very much about how people perceive each other. There's a lot of how people misunderstand each other, and there's a lot about how they come to understand each other.
Mm.
So if I'm writing in first person, I can have character A do something, and I can illustrate her character by what she does and how she does it, and have the reader interpret that. And then I can illustrate characters B's character and personality and motivation by how he watches and perceives and interprets that.
Mm.
And I can do it all in the same sentence in first person because I'm inside his head.
Yeah.
So I can characterize two characters at once. And only first person really allows you to do that smoothly. I mean, maybe you could get into a little bit of that territory in third person, but third person is really more for if you want to watch things from the outside, if you want to get a better picture of your main protagonist for the scene, or if you have a lot of characters that you're going to work with.
Mm.
It's very confusing working with a lot of characters, switching viewpoints in first person. So
Yeah.
why did I do it in present tense? Well, as I said, a lot of the book is about misunderstanding.
Mm.
If you write in past tense from a viewpoint, then that character is speaking with the benefit of hindsight.
Mm.
So they're going to be speaking from a place where they understand better what was going on than they misunderstood at first. And I didn't want that. I wanted to create this sensation where the reader maybe figures out what's going on with these two people a little more quickly and a little more completely than the characters themselves do.
Mm. I'm laughing a little because, well, Isaac, maybe, do you remember we had trouble finding any 1-star reviews, because with our
Yeah.
first guest we played a 1-star review, guess that 1-star review game, making, looking at some hilarious examples of bad 1-star reviews for really good books and just seeing how far off they
I
were.
tried to find one for Jurassic Park. I couldn't find a single 1-star review. And I couldn't find a single 1-star review of Theft of Fire.
So the best we got was a 2-star. That I think how did they put it? I thought this was particularly funny, especially considering what you just said. I'm about halfway into the book, and if the bickering doesn't stop, I'm going to turn this thing around and everybody can just go home. And then in brackets underneath, does it stop? And I looked at that, and from what I've read so far, the bickering was the first thing I loved. I thought, I'm seeing what you're talking about. The character development coming right away.
One of the things that you have to realize when you become a writer is that you're not going to please everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Your goal is to please a lot of people. If you please a lot of people, your time is worthwhile.
Yeah.
But the things that some people love are going to be precisely what others hate. And there are people who are made uncomfortable by a lot of social conflict. And we had a beta reader who I will not name, but he was the only beta reader who didn't like it. And he said, all these people are so mean to each other. And after speaking to him a bit, I realized that he had been bullied as a child. So I was essentially shoving his nose in the same kind of social conflict that he had been traumatized by.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I understand why you do not like this book. That is completely valid. You have to realize that no book can be for everyone.
Yeah.
And no book can avoid offending anyone.
Yeah.
Because if you create something that avoids offending anyone, what you've made is elevator music.
Yeah.
So
and
there are two types of bad reviews. There's you overcooked the fish, and I don't like fish. And I don't like fish is not a bad review of your book. It's a bad review of your marketing.
Interesting.
It's the wrong person is reading your book.
Yeah, the wrong person is reading your book. Yeah. So how do you present it better to prevent that from happening?
Well, I mean, on the flip side, some of the best marketing in the world shows those 1-star reviews. Like if you're selling fish and you show a 1-star review saying, I don't like fish, now people know that you sell fish.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's fun. So tell us about what's coming up. So Theft of Fire has been out for about 1.5 years. Yeah. A sequel, audiobook. I believe some of these are in the works.
The audiobook is in process. We have laid down all of the raws. I did a full cast production with 3 voice actors and directed it all myself.
Very fun.
And I think it's come out very special. It is with our sound engineer right now, and he is a fan, so he's really trying to be perfectionist, which slows us down a bit, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have.
Yeah. A late book is late once. A bad book is bad forever.
Yeah.
So, and that was delayed a little bit by, I had some family health problems. Somebody got cancer, and that sort of derailed.
That's a big one.
But the audiobook is coming very soon. And then hopefully fairly soon after that, we will have the sequel, Box of Trouble, which I am about 126,000 words into right now,
Ooh,
as of
very
today.
nice. How many words did Theft of Fire come to?
About 154.
Okay.
This
Oh, yeah,
one
so
might
you're
be slightly longer.
Okay.
fair. Yeah, which means you're right about there. That's
Yeah,
exciting. It's very
yeah.
exciting.
Well, there's going to be some work even after the word count is in, because some of it is summary that I have to go back and scaffolding that I have to go back and replace. But the sequel, Theft of Fire, was a very
Oh,
tight narrative.
Yeah.
It's 3 characters in a spacecraft. It's almost, a submarine story. And then
mm,
Box of Trouble is a lot more complicated because it opens up and you get to see this entire society of the future a lot more close up, and there's a larger cast of characters, so there will be a lot more going on.
Yeah, I
mm.
was going to ask exactly that. Has that changed your techniques for approaching it? Is it in the same tense, or are you like you getting different tools out of the toolbox to tackle this project?
Well, I've certainly had to expand how I write a little bit.
Mm,
One of the challenges was that in the second book, the first book is all from the same perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It's all from one character. And then in the second book, the second main character, Miranda, becomes a point of view character, and it switches back and forth.
Okay.
So I wanted to create her with the same sort of fidelity and unique character voice that I created Marcus. So I spent a lot of time sort of struggling with this problem of, how do I write a convincing female character from a first person point of view? And,
mm.
not just a generic female character, but one who's very unique in herself. So there are
Yes.
layers there. And that was some time investment, but that was definitely worth it. And I think that will land fairly well when it's finished.
That's
That's cool.
exciting. Yeah, so I believe we have the links should be below, at least on YouTube. So on YouTube, the link should be below to both the Kickstarter where they can get updates, and then on your website, devoneriksen.com slash audiobook. I believe it should be there. So
Yep.
anyone who wants to follow the audiobook there, and then sequel, I assume your newsletter, uh,
Yep.
your website as well for those
Yep.
updates. So very exciting. Yeah, I'm feeling it. So my own audiobook is in the works right now. I just got 2 chapters back today and got to listen in on those. It's a very fun process.
Yeah.
Must have been so cool the first time you heard any one of those 3 narrators.
Well, I was directing it. So we
So you
did
were
it
there
we
through the
did
whole
it
thing.
all over a voice channel with each individual actor recording locally.
Okay.
But,
Oh wow.
we were doing it live, so we could kind of hear it as it was coming together. Of course,
Mm,
sometimes I'm making them do 10, 12, 15, 35 takes on a
yeah.
single line. So it doesn't quite flow. But we really put in our best effort. And I found some amazing actors.
Yeah. Well, that's cool too. I mean, my first thought when you said 3, well, and I knew the 2 characters I've encountered so far, not yet the third, and I
Mhm.
thought, okay, that's
Oh
got to be
boy.
tough. 3 voicing multiple
Yeah. Well, there's
characters. How
3
are they gonna?
characters on the
Yeah,
cover,
yeah,
so
it's pretty straightforward. So yeah, that's really cool how that
That
lines up.
third character is my favorite.
Oh yeah, something to look forward
yes, a lot of people like her.
to. Very fun. Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. That must yeah, in my case, it's there's a little bit of distance where I wait for the chapter, then I give the feedback, get the next
Uh,
iteration back. So, yeah, that would be something to aspire to, being directly involved in the production. But, now uh, did you test it all? I mean, you've got one heck of a voice yourself. Did you record it all? Any readings in advance or
there are
consider
some
doing it
author
yourself?
cameos,
Mm, very fun.
but I am not a professional voice actor.
Fair.
And if you think my voice is good, you should hear the guy I got from Marcus.
Okay, that's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, he is completely out of my league.
Fair.
Amazing. I'm looking forward to that. That's really cool.
Yeah. That's the thing. These narrators are so talented. It's mind-blowing what people can do with their voices.
It's you know, and the audiobook business has sort of evolved slowly, and I think we're starting to be able to see where it's going to reach its final form. And they started out as sort of books on tape, they would call them. And they would get read out sort of as if someone was sitting next to you on the couch reading to you. And it was seen as just, oh, I'm going to translate the reading experience into this audio format. And then gradually people have started realizing, hey, there's a lot I can do with sound to make a compelling story.
Yeah.
And so I think they are evolving in the direction of this kind of 1920s, 1930s radio play.
I was about to say, that's kind of how it was in the beginning. That was the first entertainment.
Yeah. Now I'm not crazy about the whole Foley thing with lots of sound effects. So I didn't really do a lot of that. There's a little bit here and there where it adds, but I didn't do a lot. But I think the jury is still out. The market has yet to decide whether they're going to like just the voices or whether they're going to like the sound effects as well. But I think what's really critical is that you get good voice actors who are actually going to act it. And I think that I would generally recommend at least 2.
Fair.
If you have male and female parts.
Which I do, so that's tough. But yeah.
Well, I understand that not everybody is going to do it that way. And the narrator approach is still valid, but what I like is having as much authenticity in the dialogue voices as possible. So I find that if I'm listening to something, it really throws me out of a story if I'm listening to a male narrator try to do a female voice.
Yeah, it takes me out.
That's fair. Now,
do you have is there like ambiance going on? Or is it just strict reading and acting?
It's strict reading and acting. We tried the ambiance. We did a few sound tests with it, and we found that it sounds really nice when you're in a studio on a good set of headphones. But that's not how people listen to audiobooks. They listen to audiobooks on earbuds, and they listen to them in their car on the freeway. So sometimes the bells and whistles are less important than really, really good voice acting and absolute clarity.
Yeah. Clarity is the big one. Yeah.
We have a real good question here from Keenan D. Little. How has the experience of directing the audiobook affected your writing going forward?
Well, Keenan D. Little is kind of pulling a fast one there because as it turns out, that is the voice actor for Marcus.
Hey, there we go. I've heard a little bit about you, Keenan D. Little. I hear you're pretty good.
You've gotten to see this a little bit firsthand, but it really is very, very good feedback for your writing to see a really talented actor take it and say, okay, here's my interpretation of it. And then you kind of work with them to get the interpretation you want. And sometimes they come up with something that you just didn't think of.
Yeah.
Right.
And it blows you out of the water. And, Keenan and Emma and Ashley just did an amazing job. And it really enhanced my ability to visualize who the characters are as I write. You know, I particularly had a very difficult time auditioning actresses for the role of Miranda,
Mm.
because Miranda is this very unique character. She's
Yeah.
genetically engineered post-human,
Yeah.
and she's a midget. So I needed someone who could do a voice that sounded like she was very small
Yeah.
without sounding like a child,
Yeah.
because there's a slowly building romantic tension between the two of them, and you don't want her to sound like a kid.
No.
And I had listened to literally hundreds of audition reels, and I was despairing about how I was ever gonna find something that I needed, and then I listened to Emma Ray's audition, and it was just spot on, perfect right from the beginning. We did a callback audition, and she couldn't find the voice again.
Oh no.
And I had to we had to work with her a while and just get her back into it. But
That's funny. That's really
it was
funny.
like, I've seen the thing I want and now I can't have it.
That's
But
amazing.
she absolutely does an amazing job from page one. And you know, I may be sort of drowning you in superlatives here, but you'll understand when you hear it.
It's
Right.
something to look forward to. Absolutely.
That's got to be crazy to now have a voice for each of your characters that fits them.
Oh
So
yeah.
now as you're continuing on, their voice is with you now. That's
Yeah,
that's got to be crazy.
Yeah, I
Mm.
listen to their stuff when I'm trying to visualize their characters, and I've used a lot of sort of AI art tools to get pictures of the characters in different
Right. Yeah.
situations. And it's one of the tools that I use to get me into the headspace of writing a character.
Yeah, fair.
That's amazing.
I was gonna ask something off of that, my mind went a totally different direction because of the AI tools, and I guess side question, but it wasn't what I had in mind. But is that Grok or where do you go for a lot of those visuals?
Chat GPT is
Still
really
ChatGPT.
That's the
kind of
best one. Yes,
leading
it
the
is.
pack on art right now.
Mm,
You can't rely on it for any factual information. It
fair.
will cheerfully make up lies, but it's good for producing art, and it's not so much like you're going to produce a finished art product like you would hire from an artist,
Yeah.
Mhm.
because it'll get some things wrong and it'll make some things weird, and you don't have very precise control over what it does. But what I find it's very useful is if you have an image in your head and you need to communicate with your cover artist, and you need to tell that cover artist what a character looks like. You know, I insist my cover artist read the book, but that
Mhm.
only kind of gets
Mm,
you halfway there.
yeah.
What AI art does is it allows you as a non-artist to produce rough sketches of what your imagination looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair.
For my covers, my brother did them, and I
Mm,
had to get exactly what I wanted. I had to sketch out on paper exactly, like using boxes and circles. Like a character goes here, this is up here. He looks
yeah,
like this a little bit, and he was able to take that and run with it and make something cool. But yes, AI stuff is really good for very quickly hashing out ideas and finding out what
yeah,
works.
yeah. I understand AI art not as a substitute for an artist, but as a tool for an artist.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I do. And funny enough, it's something I probably should have done today because I just commissioned a new black and white illustration for my next book, because I had some few that really blew up with book number one, and I found some good references that visually captured what I wanted, and then I just gave him a text brief, broke down each element for him, and that's what I've done in the past. And Joe Urqueza, who does my art, just incredible, but yeah, I don't know how he does it because that's the thing. I probably should be kinder to him and give him some better references to work with.
Yes,
AI
yes.
would not be
Well,
the first to do that.
one of the skills of a really good cover artist or interior illustrator is not just their art skills, but their ability to draw out a description, their
Mm,
ability to communicate with the person whose head the ideas come from and to get those across.
yeah.
And I was fortunate enough, after I fired my first cover artist, to find someone who was extremely patient with me
Mm,
and very, very dialed in on how to get me to describe what she needed in a way that she needed it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and this has been, you know, one of the unique experiences of being self-published is you go to conventions, you hang out with trad pub writers, and you get to hear the stories, and you get to hear just how different the two experiences are. Because
mm.
I'll be sitting there with some very successful writers, and they'll say things like, "Oh, well, you know, my fifth novel didn't really sell as well. And I think it's partially because, you know, such and such publishing house put a terrible cover on it, and there was nothing I could do." And
Yeah.
I'm just sitting there staring at them like they've stepped out of a portal from another universe. Because, you know, I'll be sitting there at 1 o'clock in the morning emailing my cover artist, like, "I don't like the angle of her eyebrow."
Yeah,
Exactly.
so
One
accurate.
of the wonderful things about being self-published is that anyone who works with you works for you. So
Mhm.
you have absolute, you know, I have to write some checks, but
Mm.
you have the absolute creative control, and you can execute your vision exactly how you wanted. And if it's not good, it's entirely your fault.
Yeah,
You are the master of your own destiny.
Yep.
it's very true. One of the pleasures of doing what we do. I mean, you're preaching to the converted on this one for sure. So, yeah, absolutely.
I
Oh,
have a
man.
science question for you.
Yes.
Mm,
So theft of fire is very technical, but it's very approachable at the same time.
Mhm.
I've never felt overwhelmed.
Uh-huh.
Has advancements in technology today, like with SpaceX and stuff, has
Yeah.
that affected how you're writing the next book?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The setting of the Orbital Space series is basically me asking myself, okay, what is the likely path for the future if SpaceX as a company succeeds in its ambitions and creates a Mars colony and we start mining asteroids? What does the 22nd century look like in that case? Now, because it's a story and you have to have a fun adventure, I threw in some alien artifacts,
As you do, yes.
which we will not find in our solar system. That is not going to be a thing. Sorry, guys, it's not going to happen.
not on the dark side of the moon.
Nope. No monoliths. No
Disappointed.
monoliths. Sometimes something has to be there just to make it a fun story.
Mm,
But all of the human technology, physics, was researched and computed, and all of it is something that we currently at least think could work.
Right.
Now,
very cool.
even when you're doing hard science fiction, you can't design everything so that you're sure that it will work.
Yeah.
Because if you could do that to that level, you would not be writing science fiction.
You'd be making a lot more money too.
You would be raising funds for a startup.
Yeah.
But if you do enough of your homework, then what you will do is gain readers' trust, and they will give you the rest.
Yeah.
And there are some, you know, readers run the gamut on this. There are some readers who are like, yeah, so long as it sounds plausible and doesn't kick me out of the story, I'll accept it.
Yeah.
And then there are other guys who are aerospace engineers, or like they work on the Space Force, or they're asteroid scientists, and they will check all of your math on the back of an envelope.
Yep.
And then when they say, "Oh, that was good," that's a really good feeling.
That's got to
I had
feel good.
this
Getting
one
approval from them.
I had this one Amazon review from this lady who said, "I'm an asteroid scientist, and what he says about asteroids really checks out." So I'm thinking, okay, I'm not sure whether to believe this. So I go and I look at her Amazon username and I do some Google searches, and okay, here's a scientist and here's some published papers, and oh, here's an asteroid named after her.
Wow.
Okay.
That's high praise.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
This is legit.
My immediate thought was, you got to go double check if she's an acquaintance of Christine at all. You get praised that high. That's very cool. Oh man. Well, speaking of science, then Isaac, what do you think? Do you want to jump to a little bit of a game here?
Yeah, sure. So I told my brother that I was talking to a space guy, younger brother, and he had some questions about, where are the best places to set up camp when we finally get up there. So I have some slides here. I want to get your feedback on what would be the hardest to settle and the most worthwhile to settle. I just want to pick your brain a little bit. So this is Go Space, Young Man. We're going to colonize space.
Which makes me laugh every time I see it. Okay, so place number 1.
The moon, the classic.
Okay. Well, the moon has some advantages, and we will probably be putting some things on the moon. The moon has the advantage that it's close to Earth and that it has a very shallow gravity well. So you can launch things from there fairly easy. The problem is that there's really not much there in terms of minerals or things that you'd want to extract. We don't really think currently that there's all that much ice. That could change.
Right.
We've gone back and forth on that in the past. But my understanding is that we currently think there's very little to none. So anything we want there, we're going to have to bring there. And most of its value is going to lie in its proximity to Earth. And
so this will be like our gas station.
Yeah. Combination of proximity to Earth with a shallow gravity well.
Okay. Next.
Cool. Okay.
Ceres.
Fun fact, it's named after the goddess of corn or something, and it's where we get the word cereal.
Well, once you get into little dwarf planets in the asteroid belt, there's not really any significant utility that I know of to something with gravity that low, because it's not really going to hold you or your stuff in place. And so a lot of the sort of major asteroid belt bodies may be more useful as extraction sources than they are as bases. I think that what we're maybe going to see is that a lot of your habitat structures, at a certain point, it makes more sense to build habitat structure, especially if you're mining asteroids, than it does to just say, oh, here's a ball of rock. We can use this as a habitat. Because if your gravity is too low, then you're going to have spin gravity anyway. And having a ball of rock nearby doesn't really help you. It's what are you going to do with that rock is why you want to be near it.
I imagine with one idea I have is we could use Ceres as a battering ram to break up other asteroids we may want to mine, maybe. Of course, that could create shrapnel, which could be bad.
Very. Yeah, I can see that going wrong.
Interesting.
Or we could
tunnel
it out.
Economics works out on that
too.
Yeah, okay, the economics do not check out.
So the cereal planet, maybe not the best place to
probably not the best
set down roots.
Maybe not. There may be some use to it.
Okay.
This next one's a good one.
Yes.
Endor. Or
This
if we're
is my
going to be
favorite of
accurate, the
planets.
furthest moon of Endor.
Well, it does have a breathable atmosphere, which is extremely valuable.
In that documentary, yeah, they were walking around just fine.
Yeah, the gravity seems to be fairly comfortable. There's local plant life to generate oxygen, and there's also meat sources locally
That's
available.
right. That's right. I don't.
Local sources of meat and fur, which is very stylish. So
this we may not mind this one, but we could set up a little fur trade.
Oh yeah,
I bet
absolutely.
that might be worth a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely. Fur trapping was really one of the major ways of monetizing early America, so that could work for Endor as well.
That's actually really, yeah. I could
You're
totally
going
see
to
that.
upset a lot of Star Wars fans right now. This is so good. Probably the most controversial thing.
I upset a lot of people generally.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is as good an answer as we could have hoped for. Oh man, I was gonna call them Wookiees.
Ewoks are basically just
Ewoks,
space beavers we gotta go get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Canadian. We have beaver tails all the time, so terrible. Not actual beaver tails. All right. Last but not least, Beetlejuice.
I think this would be a great. I don't think there's I think it's a gas giant. I don't think there's a ground, but maybe we could have some kind of wind city, like sails. Like I read somewhere that they think they can settle Venus by putting little wind cities there. I don't know how accurate that is, though.
Yeah, well, Venus, you really you have a dense atmosphere, so you can float stuff on it a little more easily.
Has a very dense atmosphere.
Than you
I've
can
heard.
get to the surface. Yeah, I'm gonna have to pass on this one. I haven't seen the documentary, so.
Yeah, this documentary was very confused. It wasn't really about a planet. I was very confused to why they made a movie about Beetlejuice without talking about the planet Beetlejuice. I didn't get it.
Yeah.
I think the idea is you say the name 3 times and the planet comes and basically collides with Earth, and that's the end of civilization as we know it.
Yeah,
right?
let's try to avoid that.
Eel says he thinks that, I won't say it again, was a star, that place. I don't think you're right. I think it was a gas giant.
It actually is a star.
It's a star.
It may have some gas giants orbiting it.
Well, and David Batterina, why are we not surprised? Uranus, there's another one. Thank you, David. Oh man. Well, thank you, Devon, for being such a good sport with that. That was amazing. I'm just grilled Ewok. I'm done for the night. That's already my highlight. Absolutely.
What would it taste like? It wouldn't be
chicken.
It's chicken, you think?
Or bear? Have you ever tried bear?
What does bear taste like? I hear bear is, if you eat bear, you get worms.
Yeah,
That's
bear
what
does
I've heard.
not taste like chicken, but it's like a lot of things taste like chicken. Although that's not actually true that everything tastes like chicken. It's just that everything tastes like dinosaur. And chicken is one of the things that tastes like dinosaur.
There we go.
They were around a lot back in the day.
Now you're really getting us to think. Oh, that's great. Oh man, that hurt. So back really quick. I cracked a joke about Christine earlier, but I wanted to ask you about just marketing in general. Again, just with how successful Theft of Fire has been.
Yes.
But I've had plenty of interactions with Christine on X, and just seeing someone that devoted to supporting you, it's really incredible. So just tell us a little bit about that.
Well, perhaps she can.
Well,
you'll have to stand though. We didn't bring another chair.
Yeah, just sort of kneelish.
Kneel
well,
down.
when Devon was writing and he wasn't quite done, he had one day where he was feeling a little blue because he's like, I know what I wrote is good, but I don't know if being good is enough. It's hard to get noticed. And I was like, okay, well, I have a mission now. I'm going to make sure people know the name Theft of Fire, Orbital Space #1. And I've always been a bit of a fangirl. I loved Redwall. I loved Discworld. I mean, I still love both of these things. They've been massive influences in my life, and it's like, okay, well, I've got a new thing, the Orbital Space series. And being from tech, it's like, okay, I'm already familiar with the audience of people who would love your book, because I don't know, if you were writing like gory murder mysteries, I wouldn't know how to sell. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, I want people to read Theft of Fire. If you're watching this show, you've probably already read Theft of Fire. Go tell
good.
someone else to read it.
Yeah, well, there's something you said that I really want to touch on here, and it's somewhat related to marketing, but it's an important thing, I think, for new writers to understand, is that when you embark on any kind of creative project, when you're creating any kind of art, you are, by definition, producing something that nobody asked for and nobody wants. Because how could they? They don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It exists only in your head. So, with that in mind, imagine the level of self-belief, or you don't have to imagine it. Just imagine the level of self-belief that is required to say, I am going to make this thing that you didn't ask for, and you are going to love it because I insist.
Right.
I insist upon this. And you have to believe that every day. You have to have that arrogance every day as you're writing, and through that hard first part of your career where you're trying to get noticed. So my advice would be, find people who believe in you, even on the days when you don't believe in yourself. That is so important.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then marry them, right? I've seen that seems to work well. Marketing 101. It's a great strategy.
When did you decide you wanted to write Theft of Fire? We didn't really cover that. What made you want to write this book, to take this dive?
Well, when I was a teenager, and when I was a child, actually, I spent a lot of my childhood back in the stacks in libraries with a huge pile of classic science fiction books, because I discovered that something I enjoyed so much was reading about a totally different world and trying to imagine that. And I decided as a teenager that I wanted to be a science fiction writer. And, adults said, oh, honey, that's a stupid dream. Don't do that. And of course, you needed a lot of institutional support back in the 80s and 90s to become a science fiction writer, because we didn't have the internet the way we do now.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I became an engineer. And I worked.
That'll show them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I worked on various things and various industries for many decades, but I just really never forgot that love of science fiction. And so when I decided that I was going to retire, it's like, okay, no one can tell. I don't need money. Software engineering has been good to me. Also, having wives with professional salaries has been good to me.
Yeah.
So it's like, I can do whatever I want. I can take risks. I can write books.
Yeah.
And the book is making money, and hopefully the others will too. So it's a gamble that paid off, but it was something that I had in the back of my mind throughout my life as something I wanted to do.
Very cool. And then that path to self-publishing, it seems to, well, like you said, it's a huge risk, but seems to very much be paying off for you.
Yeah. Well, I personally, and this is going to make some people angry.
Okay, I'm ready.
And it already has. I've been cussed out at conventions for saying this. One editor flat out called me a sociopath, I believe. I said, this is what I don't think that there is any benefit to.
Hey, if you're nervous, I'm nervous.
No,
I'm waiting for it.
Christine. Our cat has decided Christine's hair is his new toy. Well, perhaps he's telling you that he needs to be played with. Sorry.
So good.
I don't think that there is a benefit in having a traditional publisher for new authors today.
Yeah.
You can hire an editor, you can hire a cover artist, and a lot of the traditional benefits of publishing houses has gone away.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
there used to be this mythical beast called an advance. As a new author, you will not see that.
Yeah.
You know, there used to be a budget for publicity. Yeah, publishing houses still have publicity budgets, but that is going to Brandon Sanderson's book.
Yeah.
It is not going to yours. You know, it used to be that you really, really needed to be able to leverage the relationship that trad pub houses have with bookstores to sell any books. Well, nowadays it's all Amazon, and Amazon is going to be 70% of your sales.
Yeah.
And 70% of your Amazon sales are going to be Kindle ebooks. And so you can actually do this yourself. You're going to have to do a lot of publicity.
Yeah.
But if you're trad pub, you're still going to have to do a lot of publicity. So that's a wash. There's no difference.
The freedom.
The difference is that if you are your own publisher, and that requires learning a lot of things about how to set up a book, and it's non-trivial. You have to go through that. But once you've gone through that, then you don't have somebody else taking a bite out of every sale you make.
Yep.
Or at least significantly less.
Yeah.
Amazon.
Yeah. Well, vendors take a bite.
Yeah.
But if you have a publisher, vendors take a bite, and then publishers take a bite of what's left.
Yeah.
I make about 4 to 5 times what traditionally published authors make per book sale.
Yeah. Which adds up very quick. Very
yes,
quickly.
It does.
Yeah, they have to change something about their business, or I mean, how much longer can they really keep doing this before they have to change? I mean,
yeah, well, the needs of authors have changed. What publishers are able to offer to authors has changed. And the juice is, in my opinion, no longer worth the squeeze.
Yeah.
Now, if you're Brandon Sanderson and you have an existing relationship with Tor, or if you're Larry Correa and you have an existing relationship with Bain, and you already have this great big audience, then the math works out differently.
Yeah.
But for authors who are just trying to get noticed, TradPub will not help you. So the only real benefit, what they'll do is they'll publish your book. You'll be, somewhere spine out on the bottom shelf in the back of a bookstore that is mostly devoted to selling porn for women in the monster fucker genre. And they will see if you take off. And if you don't, they will dump you.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of benefit there. I understand that it's very scary to do all this yourself, but when you do all of it yourself, you have control and you can do things.
Yeah.
And all of the hard stuff associated with self-publishing, even if you have a publisher, you're going to have to do it anyway. They're not going to do it for you. They're not going to give you very much. So
Once
you
you get
might
into
as
it,
well retain control.
yeah. And the thing is, once you get into it, a lot of these skills are actually a lot of fun to learn. Book formatting it's actually a lot of fun when you do it yourself and then see that come out the other side printed exactly as you imagined it. Editing, learning the editing skills so you can work better with an editor.
Yeah.
Cover design, like we talked about, getting to
Yeah.
see your
Yeah.
dream come to life on the page.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it though. Coming out of
And
school, I was so nervous about taking on
oh
any of
yeah.
this myself.
Yeah. It can be scary
Yeah.
to try to launch this whole enterprise on your own. But also there's once you get used to it, there's a lot of comfort in knowing that you won't be sunk by anybody else's screw up.
Mm.
Yeah.
You won't be sunk by anybody else's lack of passion for your project.
Yeah.
You know, anything that happens to you, it's on you, and therefore you can avoid it.
Yeah. That can be a big responsibility to handle,
Oh yeah.
but it's fun.
Oh yeah.
Once
Oh yeah.
Well,
But if you don't have a lot of courage, this is not the profession for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
and
That's
also
accurate.
at this stage, if you mess something up, that's not the end of the world. You're still small potatoes.
Oh yeah.
You can
Yeah.
recover very, very quickly.
Yeah. And you're always going to make mistakes, and you're always going to have to learn from those mistakes.
Mm.
There are many, many things that I could have done differently earlier, but I had to learn to do them differently as I went on this journey.
Yeah.
And that's just part of being an author. And it's okay, because you don't have a publisher who is looking over your shoulder counting book sales to see if they should terminate your contract.
Mm-hmm.
You have time.
Yeah.
Any book that you don't sell today, anyone who doesn't buy your book today because you didn't pitch it well enough or they've never heard of you, you can always sell it tomorrow. Books don't decay. They exist
Mm-hmm.
forever. So if you put it out there and it takes you a long time to build an audience, then when you do, you can still sell that book.
Yep.
Because as authors, we are not in the book selling business. A lot of what we do, we get money by selling books, but that's not really the fundamental truth of the business we're in. What we fundamentally do is develop a relationship with an audience.
Mm. Yeah.
And an audience is a group of people where they trust you enough that if you put out a book and the cover is just blue, no picture, no back cover text, it's just got the title of the book and your name. If they'll buy your book, that's your audience.
Hmm.
And it is that relationship that pays you over and over and over again and allows you to pay your bills and make a living doing your dream job.
Yeah.
So, yes, you write books, but your financial success doesn't come from writing a great book. It comes from building a relationship with that audience. And writing good books is only one element of that. You can write a great book and be greeted by the sound of crickets when you publish it,
Yep.
only to have it take off years later when you have developed an audience.
And it comes back to kind of what you said earlier about, well, fish. I love that example.
Yeah.
If you're trying to sell
Yeah.
fish, you have to find the people who want
You
fish.
you have to find the people who love what it is you do.
Yeah.
Because if you do what you love, if you write what resonates with you, there are 7, 8 billion people in the world now. That
Yep.
This may be tough news to hear, but you are not unique.
Shucks.
You are not unique. There are other people like you. And if you find them, they will like what you like.
Yeah. Well, we're hitting the hour mark right about now. We want to be respectful of your time. Quick, maybe a fun little closing thought, depending on how much time you have. But we like to talk the mechanics of this all, and we've done a good amount of that here tonight. But one thought.
Yes.
Do you have a particularly controversial piece of writing advice that you disagree with? And how did you get to the point where you realized you disagree with it? Yeah.
Well, what pieces of writing advice do I disagree with?
Hmm.
Almost all of them.
So we're gonna be here for a while, folks.
Because
Strap
when you say I am a writer, or you say I am going to be a writer, or you say I am writing a book, so many people pop out of the woodwork to say stupid things to you.
in.
And they say those stupid things because they heard it once. It made sense to them with the 30 seconds of thought that they gave it.
Mm.
And now they have this thing they can say when they want to sound smart. And they will say things like, don't be a writer unless you love writing.
Mm.
Nobody loves writing. Nobody loves sitting in front of a blank page and trying to fill it, where you write a sentence and you hate the sentence and you delete the sentence, and then you try to write the sentence again and you hate that too and you delete it. Nobody loves that.
It never ends. It goes
What
on.
you are sustained by is love of the story you're trying to tell.
Mm.
So there's a whole bunch of like really bad pieces of writing advice like this, like don't use adverbs
Classic.
and show, don't tell.
Yeah.
What does showing consist of? Smaller pieces of telling. And and I had one guy who said, "Oh, you shouldn't start out your book like this because you should never start a story at mealtime
Mm.
because one of the characters is eating a sandwich in the first scene."
Yeah.
Like, where do you get this stuff from? And I think why there is this deluge of bad advice is that writing is the process of taking a story, an idea, an image that exists only in the private space inside your skull, and you're going to get it down on paper or in print so that other people can put it into their brains.
Mm.
And when you think of writing that way, when you think of fiction writing that way, then you realize that the process of getting that out of your brain has to be adapted to how your brain works. And that is very, very, very individual.
Yeah.
So everyone's writing technique is going to be a little bit different. And the source of a lot of this bad advice is, somebody finds out how they write and they think it's how to write. So if I could give a piece of writing advice, I would say, no one can tell you how to write. They can only tell you how they write.
Mm.
So what you have to do if you need writing advice is you have to listen to a lot of different writers with very, very different takes.
Yeah.
And then throw away 95% of what you hear and keep the 5% that makes your brain go, yes, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. Digging for gold.
Yes.
Yeah. I like that. I like that a lot. Maybe flipping the script really quick.
Yeah.
Is there is there maybe one piece, let's narrow it down, maybe one piece of writing advice that initially you hated or thought was terrible and dumb or resisted, and that as you got deeper into Theft of Fire, maybe that started to appeal to you and you ended up using?
I think I didn't exactly hate this at first, but it started to make more sense to me the more I wrote.
Hmm.
And that is, don't wait for inspiration.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Because some days you will be inspired. Some days an idea will pop into your head and you will be on fire to write it down.
Yep.
And other days you'll be in a state, and this is far more common, you'll be in a state where that can happen, but it only happens when you sit in front of what you've already written and look at it and try to figure it out.
Hmm.
So you don't ever want to say, I'm not inspired, I can't write today, I'm not going to put my butt in the chair and my fingers on the keyboard. Sometimes you have to know when it's not working.
Yeah.
And you need to go sit by a waterfall or something.
Yep.
You need to go shooting. But you have to at least butt on chair, fingers on keyboard every day. I highly recommend every day. Weekends, holidays, New Year's Eve, your birthday.
Yep.
You work every day, even if it's only in your head as you're driving down the freeway trying to solve some story problem. You don't get to take 2-week vacations. Your vacation is that you get to have an entire career doing what you love. Your vacation is that you get to have your dream job, but the price of having your dream job is you have to do it.
Yeah.
Don't be Patrick Rothfuss. Don't be George Martin. People are very angry at them. Don't do that.
Yeah. Rightly, especially when you've been on the side and you build that habit and you fall. Yeah. Like you said, it's the story that sustains you.
We all take longer to write than we would like to. We all have delays. Maybe something happens. Maybe we have to, get a real job for a while. Maybe we have a real job when we start out.
Mhm.
Maybe the wife gets cancer. Things happen.
Yep.
But there is a limit. You have to have some kind of work ethic, and you have to sit down and try to do it every day. Because it's going to end up where you and I and many, many people watching this are going to have entire careers between 2 of George Martin's books.
Yeah.
Yep. More than one career for a lot of us. It's very, very
so
true.
if I could give one piece of advice, it is butt on seat, fingers on keyboard.
Love it.
Do
Absolutely
the
love
work.
It. Yeah. Well, I think that's an amazing note to end this on. If you're
Well, I have one more question. One more quick question.
one more from
What
Isaac.
should we be reading? What do you suggest
There's
to
a good
everyone?
one.
What should they read? Theft of Fire, of course, but any good books you've read recently that been on your mind?
Well, there's 2 ways to answer this. There's what inspired me, what did I like?
Oh, yes.
And there's how should an author read? So which one are you interested in?
I would like a little bit of both. I assume there's some crossover.
Okay. I really like the second one. I'm gonna be a little biased there. I want to know how an author
we can start there. We can start.
Perfect.
I started my career gambling on the assumption that audiences are not stupid. They're
Right.
smart. They will eat Soylent Green if there is nothing else to eat, but they want steak.
Mhm.
So I started with the assumption that if something sold really well and people were enthusiastic about it, then it's probably pretty good, no matter how much the critics and the fancy art types and the literature magazines look down on it. So what I did was I read things that were outside my genre and my tastes. I went and I read Twilight. And, you know, I'm not at all interested in monster fucker romances about sparkly vampires. I think that's a pretty stupid subject.
Yeah.
But when you pick up the book, the writing craftsmanship works. And when you are reading something that has good writing craftsmanship, but you are not interested in the genre or subject matter, then you don't get distracted from the writing craftsmanship. And you start to see it a lot more clearly. What did she do with this character? You know, why is Bella such a blank character in Twilight? Well, have you ever played the Half-Life video games? Gordon Freeman doesn't talk because the player is Gordon Freeman. Gordon Freeman is a blank so that the player can be Gordon Freeman. That's what... Oh, now I've forgotten the author's name, but whoever she was, that's what she did for
Stephanie
her.
Meyer?
Stephanie Meyer. Yeah. Yeah. And it was brilliant. You know, that wasn't a bad character choice. It was extremely well done. And another thing that I did before actually reading Harry Potter, because I have no real interest in books for children about wizard schools. But one thing I did as an exercise is I picked out a random Harry Potter book and I opened it to a random page and I just started reading, not having any idea what was going on. And there were 3 characters on that page. And it was perfectly clear what every one of them wanted. And it was perfectly clear how the interactions of those motivations led to what was happening. And it was perfectly clear what was happening. That, my friends, is good writing.
Fair.
So look for good writing in your genre and outside your genre. When you read outside your genre, you're going to see the craftsmanship. When you read in your genre, you're going to be inspired.
Gotcha.
That's really good. Yep.
And, you know, personally, for me, the inspiration list is probably Heinlein, most of all.
Nice.
You know, I got told you are not the next Heinlein, and I took that personally. A lot of Heinlein.
Love it.
And about 10% of my Amazon reviews compare me to Heinlein.
That's awesome.
Just saying.
Yep.
That's good.
And then Niven for some of the big space engineering and physics. And someone that some people may not have heard of as much, an author named Walter John Williams, who is an absolute master of his craft, but he is not a master of marketing. So maybe that's why you haven't heard of him.
What was his name?
Because Walter John Williams. And his thing is he hasn't really quite developed the same audience because he can't pick a genre and stick to it. He will write science fiction, and then he will write historical fiction in the Age of Sail, and then he will write some urban fantasy, and then he will write a contemporary thriller. And, you know, even I can't read all his stuff because I don't like a lot of the genres he works in. But just for pure craftsmanship, he's an excellent read.
Nice.
Well, on that note, would there ever be the possibility, or if you ever considered it, would there be another genre you would write in, and what would it be?
I think that after I finish the Orbital Space series, I might like to do some fantasy. But that is kind of a cheaty answer.
Yeah, fair.
Because the audience overlap is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the real reason for this is that I consider science fiction to be a subgenre of fantasy.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And some people say that. And the way I picture this is that I think fantasy is any story where the setting is so different from the reader's daily experience that you have to make a conscious and sustained effort to explain it throughout the book.
Yeah.
And science fiction is just where that different setting is based on technological extrapolation rather than mythology or alternate universes.
Yeah.
And I think the reason that the audiences overlap so much is the people who read science fiction and fantasy are the people who like the experience of being thrown into an alternate universe and having to figure it out and getting to imagine it. You know, I definitely, if something is set in the contemporary modern world, I usually tend to get a little bored. I want a new and fantastic setting.
Yeah.
There needs to be some kind of weird twist.
Yeah.
There's got to be some little bit of, I need to entertain some fantasy as I'm exploring that.
Yeah. So I am hoping that I can do some fantasy throughout my career while retaining most of the audience for that. Any kind of genre switch is a little bit of a risk.
Yeah.
But there's also a risk in sticking to the same thing if you really don't want to be pigeonholed. I mean, if you look at Terry Pratchett, Discworld was tremendously successful. But if he hadn't wanted to spend his entire career writing Discworld, he would have been a little bit stuck because he did write a few things other than Discworld and nobody read them.
Fair.
Because they weren't there for Terry Pratchett, they were there for Discworld. Yeah. And it does happen that authors get stuck that way. Arthur Conan Doyle hated Sherlock Holmes.
Very good example. Absolutely.
He tried to kill him off.
Yeah.
It didn't stick. So I think that authors need to manage their careers carefully because, again, you're building an audience, you're building a brand. You need to manage that brand carefully so that it gives you the space to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
I mean, if you call yourself, if you're actually two guys and you call yourself James S.A. Corey and you write a space opera with some real physics and people love it, well, then that's who you are. You're James S.A. Corey forever.
Yep.
And you'd better be comfortable working with this guy.
You better like the other guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Because if you go back to being Daniel Abrams or whatever, then everybody says, who? Yeah. Who's that? Because they're used to reading James S.A. Corey, who doesn't exist. So, you know, if you, there's a lot to recommend itself in getting, there's a lot to be said for getting people hooked on your universe.
Yeah.
But if that's going to be your brand instead of your writing style and your authorship, then you better be comfortable writing stories in that universe for the rest of your career.
Yeah.
So I don't want to do that. So I am trying to make my brand my style and quality of writing rather than a particular universe, because Orbital Space is 4 books. I've written the ending of the last book. I know exactly where it goes. And it ends when it goes just about as far as it could possibly have gone. And after that, it will be time for something new. So probably some fantasy.
So the plan is to see this through till the end of the 4 books.
Oh
and
yes,
then-
absolutely. Absolutely. You don't want to stop and write a side project, because then you just give people George Martin vibes.
Mm. Which is funny because that's what I was about to do. So now I
That's
might
what
have
I'm
to
currently
reconsider.
doing.
You're talking to the worst 2 people for that.
Well, you may be making a mistake,
Yeah.
because I'll tell you something. George Martin killed a lot of careers. And the way that he killed a lot of careers is that he made people reluctant to buy a series until the whole thing is finished.
Yeah.
True.
So
Yeah.
he very much killed the epic fantasy genre, because epic fantasy is 12 books.
Yeah.
That's at least a decade of an author's life.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone with the sheer stubbornness and strength of character to write books for a decade and not see all that many sales.
Huh.
You can't have epic fantasy if some people aren't willing to buy the first book before the last is written.
Yeah.
True.
So, and what you got out there is a lot of audience who are like, I don't want to buy the first book, and I don't want to buy the books until the series is complete. And it makes sense from their perspective, but they don't necessarily understand the impact this has on writing.
Yep.
And how they're not punishing George Martin by doing this. He's fat and happy, laughing on top of a stack of millions upon millions of dollars. Who they're punishing is the guy who came after George Martin.
Yeah.
And okay, he's
Rest of us.
got this 12 volume, 10 volume, 7 volume epic fantasy series in his mind that he is passionate about. And he's not going to sell enough books to make it. So,
Gotcha.
I'm
glad I'm not writing 12 of these books.
Yeah. So I would highly recommend to authors, and I don't say, oh, you should do what Naomi Novik did and write 5 books before you publish the first one. I don't actually recommend that, because Naomi Novik is good. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Naomi Novik is Naomi Novik. But if you write 4 novels and stick them in a drawer, and then you write a 5th novel and you publish them all, then you don't really have the experience of writing 5 novels. What you've done is you've written 5 first novels.
Yeah.
Because you don't get the feedback.
Yeah. None of the learning.
So that is a good marketing strategy, but it can hurt your writing, and it can hurt your writing motivation.
Yeah.
So I don't recommend doing that. But what I do recommend is, if you start a series, by God, you better finish it before you move on to something else.
Challenge accepted.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that is very fair. Yeah. Hard to please. Well, anyways, no, it's
because that audience relationship is about trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is about them trusting you. It is about them trusting you not to give them a bad experience and not to leave them hanging. Because there is something very special and very personal about reading a book. People go to a theater and watch a movie. They sit in the living room and watch a movie. They curl up in their beds and read a book. Yeah. And that book, there's a feeling when you're reading a really good book that it's being read only by you. And that it was read and it was written only for you. And that's an illusion. But it's a comfortable illusion. It's a good illusion. It's an important illusion. And that's why the experience of being disappointed by a book is so personal to people.
Yeah.
So, as an author, you have to build that kind of trust that you're not going to let somebody down. Because if you do, they're so much more disappointed than if they had watched a bad movie. Now, there's a flip side to that, is that if they watch a good movie, okay, that was a good movie. If they read a good book, they love that author.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It generates much more loyalty on the flip side, but you have to build that trust. And one of the major elements of that trust is I can trust this author not to lose interest in a project that I still love and want to see finished.
Mm.
And they're going to say, oh, I'm going to go write an alternate history book instead.
Hmm.
I'm not going to finish Song of Ice and Fire. I'm going to write, a historical prequel to Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah.
Because I know that my name will sell books, and
Yeah.
I'm too self-indulgent to overcome my writer's block.
Yeah. That's
So
nuts.
you gotta prove to, because like it or not, with your audience, it is a relationship.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It is a relationship because they see it that way. So you have to not disappoint them.
Well, I'm a part of your audience. I'm looking forward to the next. I'm looking forward to Box of Trouble.
Well, I'm glad you are. I'm working very hard on it. I am not the fastest writer, but by God, I will finish.
That's awesome.
Awesome. That's
And
great.
oh, sorry. Oh, I was going to
You go
say, and
ahead.
the audiobook coming out even sooner by
Yes.
all accounts. So that's
Yes.
very exciting. So yeah, everyone listening, be sure to look at the links below. Give us a like and a follow, or a like and a subscribe, and all that good jazz. And
Like and
yeah,
subscribe. Check out Theft of Fire. If come out from whatever rock you've been hiding under, check out Theft of
It must be a
Fire.
big rock.
There it
There
is.
it
Yeah.
is. Yeah, let's
You have
turn
you
on
have a
the
cover,
screen
don't you?
here. There we
There
go.
it is.
Yeah, beauty.
That's the book.
Theft of Fire right there. So yeah, be sure to check that out, and be sure to check out Devon's website, devoneriksen.com. You can subscribe to his Substack, follow him on X for all the fun times and controversy there.
Oh yeah, a lot of fun.
Yes, very spicy.
Yeah, well, okay, let me flip back here. But anyways, yeah, thank you so much, Devon, for coming on. This was an
Well,
absolute pleasure.
thank you so much for inviting me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah. On that note, everyone,
Very, very cool.
have an awesome night. We're gonna head out, but well, you know what? We'll do the awkward wave thing while this figures out